Welcome to Encounter Wargaming. I'm Jay, and today we're going to begin our look at Warhammer 40,000 3rd Edition. Alright, so we're finally breaking into 3rd Edition. Loving it. This actually has a lot of memories for me. Like, obviously, if you guys have been watching this series, you know how much a fan I was of all the 2nd Edition stuff that we went through. Mainly because of the nostalgia factor. Like, it brings me back to my childhood, you know, in so many ways. Because that was where I started in the game. This book came out when I was in maybe grade 8 or grade 9. I mean, we'll look at the actual date in a second, but it also obviously has a lot of memories from when I was a kid. Now, this is a 3rd edition coming from the 2nd edition, right? So this was another major overhaul of the rules. And in fact, this is kind of the base to which the next like 4 editions are going to be based on. So when they completely streamlined, for lack of a better word, the 40k rules into this from the overly, I don't want to say complicated, but a lot more granular system of 2nd edition. So this book is more or less like the ones we looked at for 2nd edition, where they had a rule book, they had a war gear book, and then they had the Codex Imperialis, which basically gave you like a codex for all of the armies all in one book. This is basically all 3 of those in one book. So if you look at this right here, look how thick it is. Obviously this one has been used quite a bit. As you can see, the spine's all creased. So it's not in the best condition, but it's not in the worst condition either. And in fact, it's entirely intact, which is great. And other than the cover, some natural wear and tear to the cover, there really isn't any damage to this book. So I'm really happy to have this in my collection. I've had it for quite a few years. Obviously, I am a avid collector of the old school books because it just, like I say, it either gives me a nice nostalgia feeling inside, or it's just cool to see the progression of things and how it's evolved over the years and stuff like that. And that's why I do this series. So I hope you guys are really enjoying all these videos so far. And basically, without further ado, let's get into this book and stop my freaking ranting here. So, clearly a John Blanche piece. Love the guy's artwork. Everything is just strangely perspectived and like, it's just awesome. Black Templars, obviously. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. So let's get into it. First, some color pages. Automatically, you can see a step up from 2nd edition, where everybody had the green flocked tables. We're seeing a little more transition between static grass and like the painted sand. You know what I'm saying? Like we do nowadays. There's obviously a desert table here and an ice table. I mean, you just didn't see that kind of variety in terrain in the older 2nd edition books. So obviously Games Workshop has stepped up their game a little bit with these ones. And in fact, these ruins you can barely see here. It came with some plastic ruins in this 3rd edition starter set. Which proceed at your own peril. Cool. Standard Galaxy showcase with a little bit of fluff for you. Alright, this is the important page. Took us a few pages to get in there, but here we go. Let's look at the publishing information. 1998, so yeah, I would have been in grade 8. Depending on what time that year it came out. I guess, yeah, it was me going from 8 to 9, I think. Grade 8 to grade 9, so that just dates me. You guys can figure out how old I am from that. And yeah. Obviously, we don't have a straight-up artist. It does say cover painting there, John Blanche, just like I thought. There's a whole bunch of his stuff in here, as well as many other artists, of course. Names that we're used to seeing. Yeah, and they credit all of the game's designers and stuff like that. But of course, the head players are the players we've seen already. Rick Priestley, Andy Chambers, Gavin Thorpe, Ian Pickstock, and Jervis Johnson. I mean, these are the guys that basically invented Warhammer. And there you go, a little introduction signed by Rick Priestley. This is what it's all about, boys. Get ready. So, to start, we're just going to go through all the fluff. Like, they're basically just setting the tone for the 40k universe here. So we've got the Eternity Gate. There you go. Leading to the Golden Throne, right? The Imperial Palace. I love these old school art pieces. I mean, we've seen these in the second ed books too, but look at the Custodes there, and like random cherubs just flying around with sensors everywhere, and just the insane amount of machinery it takes just to maintain the Golden Throne at all times. Just absolutely nuts. And the third edition books were always decorated with these really like weird little illustrations. I assume this is John Blanche's art too, because it's just totally his style. But it's just all over the books in this edition, especially this book in particular. And it just really lends to the aesthetic of 40k and how it's evolved over time, and how things you'll see in this era are a little less cartoony than they were before, and a little more grimdark, which is excellent. Moving on. Here we go to the throne room. Cool. Alright, table of contents. Now, I am going to warn you guys, this book is massive, so as opposed to just doing like 1-2 hour long video, I'm going to split it up for you guys. So I think I'm actually going to go over the rules section in this video, so we'll just take a basic overview of the rules. Obviously I'm not going to go into detail and read everything for you, but you guys have seen these videos before, so you know what you're in for. I'm just going to highlight things as I notice them, flip through the book. This series is more about just seeing how beautiful these books are and how awesome they are without getting too much in detail. I mean, it would just be ridiculous for me to go through all of the rules. And then the future videos I'll go over, I wonder if I'll even, yeah, because I don't cover fluff in very much detail, but I'll show you the Age of the Imperium section, which is basically all the fluff, setting you up for the 40k universe. And then of course there's the battles book, what they're calling the rule book, and the battles book here, basically. And this will cover all the scenarios and how to fight battles, terrain, and all that kind of stuff. And then of course there's the army list section. So like I was saying to you, the army list literally gives you the codices for every single army in the game. So we're going to go over that in the third video, I think. So I'll probably divide this into 3 just to make it easy for you guys. I mean, if you got the time to sit down and watch all 3, watch all 3. If you don't, then watch one at a time. Watch the next one tomorrow night when you're painting. No worries, right? But if you're watching this the day it's out, of course, these are going to be released on successive Thursdays. So be prepared for that. If you won't be able to see the next part until next week, is what I'm telling you. But if this is way in the past, then great. You guys can watch all 3 at once and enjoy looking at this beautiful book. So there we go. We got Nick Davis and Adrian Wood playing a game right there. That's pretty cool. Cool. Yep, showing you how the book works. You know, your Force Org chart. Standard templates. In fact, this was the first introduction of the Force Org chart. I will tell you guys that, because we probably won't get to that point of the book in this video. But this was the introduction of the Force Org chart. As you saw in the second edition, it was just percentages. Like you figured out a percentage of your points were allowed to be allotted towards certain things. In this, it's selections like that. HQ, troops, fast attack, elite, heavy support, the things we're used to. There was no flyers yet in this edition, and of course super heavies weren't even a thought at this point. I mean, Forge World did sell some Titans and stuff like that, but, you know, no one actually ever used them. And in fact, in this era, Forge World was considered, like, super cheese, so not many people had Forge World models. Now everybody and their brother has them, especially with the advent of Horus Heresy. So anyway, we're looking at some color pages here. We've got, you can see even how the models have evolved drastically. Like, already we've got the Orc with the desert base, but that is literally a Gorka Morka model. And you can still see, still got that sort of silly second edition sort of proportions to make them still match the, you know, those squatty single pose Goths that we got back in the day. But obviously the aesthetic is changing, and this, excuse me, Gorka Morka was really what changed the aesthetic of Orcs from their sort of goofy, cartoony second edition look into their third ed Mad Max sort of post-apocalypse, Scraptown kind of look. And worth noting at this point, this is the introduction of the Dark Eldar. So back in second edition, I mean, there's like fan codices written and stuff like that of Dark Eldar, which are basically the Eldar that worship Slaanesh, that live in the Eye of Terror, and blah, 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 blah. So obviously they decided not to totally go that route, but they introduced the Dark Eldar in this edition. They were introduced in this starter set, in a third edition starter set. Spectacular plastics for the time period. But then looking back on them, once we started getting to 4th and 5th Ed and stuff, looking back on the Dark Eldar, they really needed a redo, and I'm glad that they did them in 6th, because they were starting to lose a lot of players. We even got the old school Gene Stealer here. That's the old 2nd Ed sort of Space Hulk Gene Stealer that you're used to seeing. And the Grots, see, that's the Gorka Morka models that they're telling you now. Bring them into 40k, buy these models, you know what I mean? And in fact, at this time, I bought that Goff, or I don't call him Goff, that Gorka Morka knob that's like standing on a box of ammo, and he's like firing his slugga, and he's got the knife sort of down, stuck in the ground. I still have him in my Ark Army. He's one of my favorite knob models, and I've had him since I was, like I say, like 13 years old. And that's when I realized that the Orcs were starting to change. And then later on in this edition, they came out with all the beautiful plastics that we know nowadays. Alright, so here we're seeing a Space Marine army. Obviously, as you can tell, they're still using the 2nd Ed models. I mean, this guy's still on a square base. You got the old school Razorback and Rhino. Even the old pewter Landspeeder. The starter set for this edition actually came out with the new plastic Landspeeder that we know and love today. And look at the old school Terminator, still on the 25mm bases, all single pose, like really, literally they were 3 pieces. They were a body and 2 arms, except for this guy who has a banner pole, obviously. And yeah, we're still seeing the pewter characters, and yeah, literally, like, this is a step out of 2nd edition, guys. We haven't quite made it to new plastics yet. They haven't come out with the sweet new Rhino, and in fact, in this edition, they come out with the plastic Land Raider, which again, we know and love today. Which was a definite improvement from the old Rogue Trader Land Raider. But anyway, moving on, let's take a look at more. Okay, so we've got a little example of a game here. Look at this badass Imperial Guard army. I used to love looking at these pictures when I was a kid and just dreaming about having armies like this. Look, the Ogrins are on square bases. That's crazy. And this is sweet, because these are all the models that we've seen, even, like I say, in the old 2nd Ed books. Like, this is literally like the studio army, you know what I mean? Like, they've got the Valhallans, they've got the Catechins, they've got the Cadians. These guys at the back, those are the Mordians. Excellent. The old Braid Stormtroopers. I got a bunch of those kicking around somewhere. And the old Hunter Killer missiles, how they were in like a box as opposed to just like on a track, like they are now. Super cool. I would love to get my hands on some of the this era of Ogrins, the 2nd Ed Ogrins. I just loved them. They came out with another set of pewter ones after this, which were just kind of boxy and weird. And then now they've come out with the plastic kits, which are just spectacular, by the way. But I still love the aesthetic of these old 2nd Ed Ogrins. A huge step up from the Rogue Trader ones, but sadly a step up from the ones that we get next for the pewters that come out in 4th. But anyway. So, we got a little sample battle report here for you. Gav's Eldar versus Andy's Space Marines. Sweet. Like I say, both of which are probably just their studio armies that they're pinning up against each other. Because we've seen these models in all the past codices. And I love how they used to show the battle reports like this back in the day, where they had the map, and they literally showed like the units moving across with arrows and little explosions and stuff for the guys that got taken out. They don't do that anymore, which is, I missed that, and it was just so much fun to sort of see that. Because you see this shot, and you're like, that's a wicked cool shot, right? But what does that mean on the battlefield? And to see the aerial view, even in cartoon form, where all the guys are represented by little circles with symbols on them. That's just something I miss about the past. Yeah, so here we go. So you can see here they've got the Gorka Morka plastics and pewter orcs all mixed together, and then the sort of new aesthetic for the knobs, like compared to the 2nd edition stuff that we saw. So but this is before they've even come out with the 3rd Ed plastics for the orcs, the multi-part orc kit plastics. So they're kind of telling you to buy the Gorka Morka ones because that's the new thing, you know what I mean? Not the 2nd Ed aesthetic. And as we're seeing here, the Dark Eldar, so they've pinned the Black Templars against the Dark Eldar as the starter set armies. Those are the 2 armies you got. This was the first time we saw this sort of new era of Space Marine, which now looks super old, especially with the advent of Primaris Marines and stuff like that. But looking at this, it was a massive step up from the... In fact, no, that's an old 2nd Ed multi-part plastic model. That's not the new sprues that they gave you in the third ed kit. Yeah, no, that's an old school Marine. These, however, were the new plastics. And they still gave it the green base, eh? The green flocked base. Huh. Oh, here's what it is. Just the basics. I mean, I don't even know if they cover this in the rules anymore. I don't think they do. They cover them on White Dwarf and on websites and stuff like that. But they used to include all kinds of stuff like this. What paints to buy, how to use primer, you know what I mean? Now the community just kind of teaches itself, I suppose. And it's showing you here how to make some basic terrain features. There's those spiky cacti that we saw in the old orc books. I am making a bunch of these, guys. You're going to see this in the future. I'm going to make a whole bunch of these. I'm just going to take a bunch of styrofoam balls and shove toothpicks into them, and I'm going to make a whole bunch of them. I'm going to show you how awesome they're going to look. And in fact, they're even showing you here, you can make rivers out of just like corrugated cardboard and like Pringles cans for bunkers. This is spectacular. This is absolutely awesome. I really wish they would still do this kind of stuff in the books. I mean, obviously they're trying to push their plastic terrain now, so you know, they're going to want you to buy and paint that stuff rather than making your own stuff, but this is great. Yeah, this is absolutely just great stuff for the scratch builders out there. Showing you basic different materials, how big a table probably is. So we got 8x4 tables, interesting, as opposed to 6x4. Huh. I didn't remember ever playing on an 8x4. That's interesting. Or maybe they're just telling you to build an 8x4. So yeah, see here they got the hills. They're showing you a pile of white dwarves underneath a blanket to make hills. We actually used to do that back in the day. We'd lay a battle mat down over top of some books and stuff like that. In fact, I even got some green underpad, like carpet underpad, and would roll it out on my basement floor, and we would play it if we played at my house. Because my buddy had a ping pong table, but I didn't, obviously. So we used to just play on the floor with a green underpad, and we had great times. So we're just looking at a bunch of example battlefields. See, we're still seeing some of the old Tyranid models, like the old Tyranid warriors. You can see here the old pewter ones, and again, all on square bases, including the Carnifex. In fact, these are in the old Hormagaunts and Termagants, the old pewter guys. Wow. Yeah, so they haven't even come out with those new plastics at the point of photographing for this rule book yet. Crazy. And that is just a freaking dope terrain set. I've seen this in so many other 3rd ed books, and it just looks so good. And you know it's just cardboard and plumbing supplies. Totally. Man. Even looking back in the past gives me ideas for current terrain. Setting up a battle. Wow, that's definitely an old school 2nd ed picture right there. Like the old cardboard buildings. That was that old fortress I showed you guys in the past in that book. Yeah, and the old pewter Tyranids. Wow, the old school Blood Angels. They literally took that out of one of the 2nd ed books. No doubt on that. No doubt. Alright, so moving into the rules. Let's take a look here. Like I was saying, these cool little John Blanche things they just throw in once in a while. I love these little archways and stuff. You'll see them show up a lot more, especially in like the army list section and stuff. They just like sneak little ones in between like squad entries and stuff like that. And one of the most iconic pictures of Space Marines ever. I believe this is actually the Crimson Fists that we're looking at here. Nope, might be the Dark Angels actually. Yeah, they do have eagles on their shoulder pads. They're probably the Dark Angels. There's probably a Crimson Fist one that's very similar. I mean, that's kind of your standard Space Marines holding up, yeah, against Tyranid. Oh, against the Dark Eldar. Interesting. Nice. What do you need to play? So we still got the scatter dice, but we've done away now with the sustained fire and the artillery dice. So it's just the scatter dice, the only special die you need. And we've even done away with all, in this edition, with all of the D4s, D12s, D8s, D10s, D20s, all that stuff gone. No more. Just D6s and the scatter die. That's all you'll need, and that's all you're going to need for the next 4 editions. Crazy, right? So yeah, if you don't have a scatter die, it's telling you here you can use a D6. That's not quite as accurate because then you're arbitrarily sort of choosing 4 directions as opposed to it actually being wherever the arrow lands. So whatever, it is what it is, right? But Yeah. So, characteristics. Now, first thing you'll notice is that they've done away with the movement characteristic, and what they've done is inserted save as a characteristic rather than as an extra little like sentence in their profile. So we've got all the characteristics we're used to seeing, except they've done away with movement. So this is when they introduced standardized movement. So all infantry moves 6 inches, all bikes and jump packs move 12. You know what I mean? Like what we're used to seeing from 3rd up until 7th. And yeah, they actually put armor save in the profile rather than it just being a sort of add-on based on your war gear. But other than that, you know, everything's pretty much the same idea. We've still got the same weapon skill versus weapon skill when you're fighting, or ballistic skill subtracted from 7, like we're used to seeing in 2nd edition. Toughness versus strength, you know, when you're fighting or shooting, for example, the strength versus the toughness. Cool. Units, telling you about different things. Infantry, bikes, cavalry, vehicles, all very different things, of course. And the standardized movements for them. And of course we're explaining the turn sequence. Now this is where they really, again, streamlined the turn sequence, because they made it just move, shoot, and assault. That's it. No psychic phase, no, you know, no cleanup phase, no morale phase, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not even sure what they call it in 2nd Ed. But yeah, this is when you start doing psychic powers in any phase, based on what the power said. This is when you start doing leadership tests in all these phases, based on what, you know, units you're interacting with and what extra universal special rules they add on. Yeah. So literally, just a 3-phase turn. Now they've in 8th, you'd think they've streamlined, they have, but they've cut assault into 2 different phases, so you actually have 5 phases, but strangely enough, that's actually less complicated than, than this rule system. So explaining the movement phase, I mean, we all understand that. Anyone who's ever played a game of Warhammer, it's still the same deal. It says here, anybody can move 6 inches. Must end your movement with 1 inch away from an enemy model. Standard deal. But facings still matter, so that's interesting. So turning and facing matters. Squad coherency, obviously the 2 inches, again, that we're used to seeing. And just a short blurb on how terrain affects your movements, so difficult terrain and all that stuff. You know, the 2d6 picked the highest. There you go, right there. 2d6 picked the highest. They moved 3. The ones that moved through the trees moved 3 inches through the trees, and the other ones got their full movement still. As long as they stay within 2 inches of each other, that's totally cool. And yeah, that lasted us right through, and it's still with us for Horus Heresy. Now, in 40k, terrain does absolutely nothing as far as movement is concerned. Certain terrain features, like ruins and stuff like that, I think take distance off your charge, but nothing affects your movement anymore, which is kind of sad, but again, it's in the spirit of streamlining, right? So it is what it is. Yeah. Examples of what effect different terrain has on troop movement. Oh, so it's not just 2d6 all the time. Maybe that was something they streamlined again for 4th, because it's showing here that actually different things. So if you're moving through sand, it's 3d6 pick the highest. Or muddy water, same. Whereas if you're moving through a dense jungle, it's 2d6 pick the highest. Crumbling rock, 2d6 pick the highest. And then if you're going through thick terrain, like marshes, mogs, thick mud, it's 1d6, just straight. On a high gravity world, negative 1d6 from your... What? Normal movement is reduced by d6 inches. Count clear terrain is difficult. Whoa. Crazy. Low gravity world plus d6 inches. You're in faster because it's low gravity. That's cool, that's cool. I didn't even know that was in this edition. Awesome. Moving on to the shooting phase. There you go, that's the new plastic land speeder. That's what we're used to a land speeder looking like. Probably didn't have enough painted up for the photography before they printed this book. Or maybe they did, and they were just using stock photos that they had already. And that's probably what happened. So yeah, shooting phase works like we always... Roll the hit, roll a wound. Standard deal. Line of sights. Who can see what. Yep, so there you go. So the wall's blocking those Space Marines, right? But these ones are all visible to the Dark Eldar. Standard thing. However, we do still have a 90-degree fire arc, so that's why facing is important. So it's interesting that they still have a 90-degree fire arc in this edition. Whereas, I believe on 4th on, dudes are 360 vision. At least infantry and like monstrous creatures and stuff like that are 360 vision. Vehicles obviously not, because they still have weapon arcs and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think I need to spend very long going over all that with you guys. Classic to wound chart, again, still survived to this day in the beautiful Horus Heresy. Done away with now in 40k. Which is kind of sad, because this is the same chart that's been around since 2nd, even though, like I say, this is a sort of streamline of 2nd. This is the chart that we are used to seeing, have been used to seeing since, like, Warhammer began. And, yeah, so it is what it is. Just giving you examples here of armor saves, how the AP system works, which is interesting. The all or nothing system rather than negatives. See, so they go with the modifiers in 2nd edition. They go to the AP system, which was like if the number was the same or better, or I should say the same or lower than your armor save, you didn't get a save at all, or you got your full armor save, which was a massive change to things. It really threw me for a loop, I remember, back in these days. Because I was like, what? Like, no negative? What? Huh? Because Warhammer stayed as negatives for a while, like Fantasy Battle. But 40k, I guess they were just trying to differentiate the two games, because I hear that they've really been trying to separate the two games, or had been over time, even though, you know, 40k really has its origins as fantasy and space. Whatever, is what it is. So they decided on a different system, and we got used to it. And in fact, like I say, it still applies for those of you out there that play Horus Heresy. This is where it all began, guys. So, just some cool little fluffy pieces showing you, you know, the different armor of the 41st Millennium. Power armor, Terminator armor, flak armor, mesh armor. We've got rules for morale checks, cool. Instant death. Armor saves for multiple wounds. Removal of multiple wound models. I believe in this edition you took wounds to remove models. Once you started taking wounds on a dude, you continue taking wounds on that dude until he's dead and then move on to the next one. But anyway. Again, I think last us through to 7th. Cover, what counts as cover? Cover saves, right? 6 up cover save for bushes and grass, 5 up for crates and wrecks and etc. Interesting. I thought wrecks were 4. Trenches, gun emplacements. Maybe by the time we got the 7th, they made them 4. In fact, I remember in 5th when it first came out that you could use your dudes for a 4-up armor save, like put a unit in front of another unit, so if they shot through them, it could be a 4-up armor save. That threw me for a loop, but anyway, we're not talking about 5th, we're talking about 3rd today. Weapons, how it works, how the template weapons work. Excellent. Rapid fire and that idea. So this is where they changed it from 1 shot at 24 and 2 shots at 12 to just 1 shot at 12. Whereas I believe in 4th, it was always 2 shots at 12 if you moved, and then 1 shot at 24 if you didn't. So just weird variations like that they change up from edition to edition, showing you that you can't shoot at all when you're firing, or you can't shoot at all when you're moving with a heavy weapon. Flamers aren't affected, of course, by movement. Barrage weapons, so landing and then scattering. Boom, 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 the flipping off of the template like we're used to. Like I say, this is where it started, guys. Moving all the way up to 7th, and even continuing now into Horus Heresy. And then they give you a little summary here of all the basic weapons, like the standard stuff that you see. And every race is covered. Yeah, Eldar, Dark Eldar, Tyranids. Now, Necrons weren't really fleshed out yet. They were a thing in 2nd edition, but they weren't really a thing yet in this edition. I don't believe Necrons have any kind of rules in here. I think the Necron 3rd Ed book was the first codex they actually got, adding them on. And in fact, the Tau were introduced to the game and later on in this edition, much, much later. We'll probably see them as we go through the books that I have in my collection. I'm not sure if I have everything, actually. I know I had everything for 2nd. I think I have everything for 3rd, but I'm not entirely sure. So anyway, And again, some cool little fluffy bits showing you the weapons of the 41st Millennium, the inner workings of a storm bolter, that's wicked cool, as well as all the different bolter ammunition that we see nowadays on Stern Guard and Death Watch and stuff like that. Cool. Las weapons, the las gun and the las pistol, plasma pistol, plasma gun, assault cannons. Showing on a dreadnought there, which is interesting. The dreadnought assault cannon. This is where we start seeing assault cannons on more things. We start seeing them on land speeders. We start seeing them on land raiders. And like, I think before, in second, it was just the dreadnought and the terminators that could take assault cannons. I don't think they were on any other vehicles. Might even be the addition we see them introduced to razorbacks and stuff like that, which is wicked cool. So now we're going into the assault phase. And this is where, oh, that's something I should note on actually. In second ed, if you wanted to charge, you couldn't shoot. You charged in the movement phase, right? So in this edition, this is where they did it, where you move, shoot, and then assault, okay? And only assault weapons, of course, could shoot and still assault. Rapid fire couldn't. Obviously, heavy weapons can't, etc. So, who's striking first? Of course, we're going by initiative order now. This is where they introduced the initiative order. Sorry, I was just reading it over just to make sure I was correct on that. And yes, I think this is where they introduced the initiative order. And in fact, being in cover, allowing you to strike first for being behind a wall, right? I believe they carried through into fourth. Models behind cover always strike first in close combat, yeah. Now, I guess they specified that in fourth, that you actually strike at initiative 10. But here they say I automatically strike first. Again, this is a complete revamp, so obviously they had to fix things later on. And yeah, this is where we sort of got our new sort of clean slate, and then we move up in the additions, slowly tweaking until where we are now. So, just like shooting, we have the same damage chart, so the same strength versus toughness chart, but this time we have a to-hit chart rather than just subtracting the number from 7. Weapon skill versus weapon skill, of course. The attacker's weapon skill versus the opponent's weapon skill. Power fists, power weapons. Power weapons just straight up ignore armor save here. So I believe it was 5th ed where they introduced AP onto close combat weapons to effectively do the same thing as this, but they made them AP3, right? So if you had a 2-up save, you still get your full 2-up save from a power weapon, which was just like, screw you. Whereas in this edition, it was just you did not get a save. Or feel no pain or anything like that. In fact, feel no pain might not have even been introduced until they invented the full-out Necron Codex. But anyway, I might be wrong there. Comment below, let me know. Am I right about that or not? Was feel no pain in the game before the Necrons were in the game? Let me know. I love being corrected. And that's not sarcasm, I actually do. Because that's the only way we learn, guys. Advancing and consolidating, cool. This was the edition where you could kill dudes and like move into another unit, which was awesome because orcs just freaking excelled. Once you got into combat, you could just slowly sweep your way across a guard army, no problem. Which is actually more realistic. I don't like this thing nowadays where you can just kind of like back off and then unload everything on them. I mean, it's cool, but meh. I guess to each their own, right? Consolidating, drawn combats, shooting in close combat. I didn't think that was actually a thing. Yeah, units in base contact may not fire in the shooting phase. Their attention's melee. Soulless commanders may wish their warriors to indiscriminately in close combat. This is not permitted. Okay, so yeah, you can't do it. I believe in second you could, and it was like randomized and stuff like that. But in this edition, it's just like no, you can't do it. No shooting into close combat. Forget that. So morale checks. Now this was, I believe, where they also introduced the 25% casualties. Once your unit takes 25% casualties, you start taking a morale check. A -1 to your morale if you're below 50. That's interesting to note. So yep, also if you're outnumbered. -2 if you're outnumbered 2 to 1. -3 if you're outnumbered 3 to 1. -4 if you're outnumbered 4 to 1. Yikes. Only apply the highest. Obviously, you're not going to beat. That would be silly. If you're actually outnumbered 4 to 1 and you end up having to take -7, 9, -10, yeah. The highest leadership in the game is 10, right? And there's something to note that's different from 8th. For those of you who didn't play in past editions and you're just looking at this for a fun little educational video, the max characteristic was 10 and the minimum characteristic was 0, and if any characteristic went below 0, you were considered dead, not just your wounds characteristic. So that's interesting to note, because now things go much higher than 10. Like, you know, I have some models in a few of my armies that are strength 16 or strength 18 and stuff like that. So yeah, that's something to note. This is Tank Shock, where they first introduced Tank Shock and how that works, as opposed to just, you know, ramming people like in 2nd Ed. Basic fallback move, showing you around terrain, you go the shortest distance possible. These are things we know and love about the game, at least those of us who played from 3rd to 7th, as I say. Crossfire rule, so if you fall back into an enemy model, you're dead. Regrouping. Grouping after an assault. Yep, in the same turn. Okay. No enemies within 60. Yep, I remember that. So you have to be above 50% to even regroup in the first place. So if you're below 50%, you could just like remove your models. It's like, okay, they ran away. Yeah, then what are they going to do? Fire their bolt pistols as they run away? And there has to be no enemy within 6 inches. I had forgotten that one though. But you do have to be in coherency to be able to rally. That makes perfect sense. And special rules for characters. We've got rules for psychic powers. It's literally just a blurb. Like, this is where they turned psychic powers into weapons. So they were either a shooting weapon, or they were a close combat thing, or they gave your dudes some extra ability at shooting, or an extra ability at close combat, done in respective phases. So here you go, it affects movement. Perils of the Warp, so if you roll a 2 or a 12, there you go on the 2 dice. So in this edition, it was a leadership test. You had to do a leadership-based test to be able to get the power off. So most psychers were like leadership 10. So really, yeah, if you're rolling snake eyes, you're rolling double 6s, then, sorry, for those of you who've only played 8th, morale back here was done on 2 dice. And you had to roll equal to or lower than your leadership after modifiers. Just to explain for those of you who didn't know. Shooting at and by characters. They're more than 6 inches away from another viable target. Otherwise you can't shoot at them. See, that's something I wish they introduced into 8th. Because it's like you can't shoot characters unless they're the closest thing nowadays. So you could have a unit that you can't even see be closer. You can't shoot them, but you can't shoot the character either, which is silly. Whereas here it says, if they're more than 6 inches away from another viable target, then you can target them. Otherwise, you can't shoot them at all. See, that's something. If a character's out on his own, why can't you shoot him in 8th? Why? It's so dumb. And I know, like, the majority of players I know complain about that. So, what's up with that? Answer me, G-Dub. What is up with that? Anyway. We're looking at the old school rules, not the current rules. But I just want to show you guys the drastic difference and how things have evolved, like I say. So it's cool to compare back here with then, because we can even learn a few things. Like, this is something that should be introduced into the new rules, and I can guarantee you that a lot of people would agree with that. Allocating attacks in close combat, characters as leaders. Special characters, famous characters, White Dwarf magazine, Shalom Macarius, blah 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 blah, Card of the Betrayer. However, these powerful characters can dominate certain types of the game, especially in smaller. Oh, this was back when you had to ask your opponent's permission to use special characters. I remember that, like they were super powerful or something. Sort of like when they came up with Apocalypse, and it was like, okay, you can ask your opponent's permission if you can use your Bane Blade in a normal game, kind of thing. Like, you gotta ask them if you can use Abaddon in a game. Like, and a lot of tournaments did not have special characters, just not happening. No special characters, which was fine because we've literally gone from 2nd Ed, which is like Hero Hammer. Like, literally, people called it Hero Hammer because characters were just overpowered, and I'm sure they were in this edition too. But you'll find that they were just so overcosted points-wise. The majority of people just took generic minimalist characters and just to bulk out on their infantry and on their battle line. So we're going into vehicles and vehicle characteristics. So this is where they introduce the very basic vehicle characteristics. Like I say in Second Ed, they have those data faxes with locations that you rolled on. There's a separate damage table for each. Yeah, none of that. Now we just have a front, a side, and a rear armor rating, which is a D6 plus strength. You guys just have to beat the armor, or equal to or beat the armor, I should say. And then yeah, there was just one damage table for all vehicles. In fact, we'll get further into it. There might actually be a separate one for glancings and a separate one for penetratings in this edition. Explaining the different types of vehicles, open-topped, fast vehicles, walkers, etc. Explaining to you terrain, how that works, difficult terrain, crashing into walls, carrying troops, embarking and disembarking. Right, so they can disembark and then both can move, or the truck can move and the unit can disembark but counts as moving. You can embark and then move, as long as they didn't move beforehand. And yeah, same thing, move and then disembark. Oh, sorry, move and then have them jump in, but they can't move any further, obviously, because the vehicle's already done its movement. Here we go, fire arcs. So of course the forest here is blocking the sponson of the predator that they're depicting here, whereas these two can still see fine. Oh, there's an additional -1 to your leadership for taking an ordnance barrage. That's interesting to note. Shooting at vehicles, choosing a vehicle as a target, how armor penetration works, so you need less, equal, or greater, right? And how that works. Right, so equal is a glancing, and greater, rolling greater than the armor value is a penetrating. And, yep, I was right. There's a separate table, there's actually 3 in this edition. 1 table for glancing hits, 1 table for penetrating hits, and 1 table for ordnance hits. Glancing or penetrating. That's something to note. Ordnance was like overpowered. Right, there you go. Against the side arc, showing you the front. Literally you're drawing from corner to corner on the tank. So you've got front, side, and rear. There you go, showing you some basic vehicles, the most common ones. What a las cannon would need to penetrate, sort of, I mean, literally, guys, if you can't add 2 numbers together and know if it's higher than that value, then you shouldn't probably be playing this stuff. But I suppose they put it there anyway. Again, keep it simple, stupid, make the stuff as idiot-proof as possible, so we can have as many players as possible. Hold down. They can only ever take a glancing hit. Counts a penetrating as a glancing. Okay, so this isn't even when they introduce cover saves yet for vehicles. So it showed you tank shocks already on the past page there. Infantry and assaulting vehicles and how that works. Obviously dreadnoughts work differently. I'm just going to check here. Vehicles can only ever be hit on a 6, whether it moved or not. Skimmers can only ever be hit on a 6. All other vehicles are hit on a 4+. So if they have no weapon skill, they're just hit on a 4+, whether they moved or not. That's interesting. Dreadnoughts, however, have a weapon skill, so they fight very similar to infantry. Jump packs, 12-inch movement. Can shoot their weapons using their normal ballistic skill, of course. Compact troops, different saving throws. 3d6 for assault and 3d6 for fallbacks. That's interesting to note. Cavalry, 12-inch movement, 3d6 for fallbacks. You can advance up to 3d6 after an assault. Cool. And bikes. Bike movement 12 inches, yep. Shooting at bikes. +1 toughness, yep, that's standard. Due to the great speed, they advance 3d6 or fall back 3d6, just like everybody else. So that's not even all that different. I guess in 4th they differentiated between these jet bikes got to move in the assault phase and so on and so forth. I think at one point, maybe it was 4th, maybe it was 5th, I don't know. We'll see as we go through the books, obviously, future in this series, but cavalry like moved 6 and then assaulted 12. It was really fucking weird. Pardon my French. Anyway, that's the rules. So next time we'll go over the Age of the Imperium, which is going to be a whole bunch of fluff, and then I'll even go through all of the battle book and how to play games in 3rd edition. So I hope you guys enjoyed that part of it today, and that was our first look at the 3rd edition rulebook. So I hope you guys enjoyed that look at the rules and some of the introductory pages to this book. I'm sorry I have to divide this one up, guys, but it's actually a massive book, as you can see, and if I were to go through all this in one video, it would just be way too long. So I'm going to have to divide it up. I'm sorry, but it is what it is. So we went through the rules today and some of the, like I say, the introductory stuff, some of the introductory fluff and stuff like that. Next time we're going to be going through the Age of the Imperium section, which is more or less just fluff around the state of the Imperium in the 41st millennium, setting the tone for Warhammer 40,000. For those in this edition that were just jumping into the game, of course this is a rule book, right? It came with the starter set, it's an introductory thing, and then we're going to go through all the battles sections, setting up scenarios, how to set up terrain, the different terrain tables and stuff like that. So we'll check that out next week. If you're watching this when it came out, it'll be out a week today. If you're watching this way in the future, then just check it out after this video. I mean, yeah. Just keep watching the playlist and you'll be fine. So, if you like this video, hit the like button, please. It goes a long way to help us here at Encounter Wargaming, and all you have to do is one little click. If you haven't yet, please hit subscribe, because I'm going to do a whole bunch more videos like this. This isn't stopping, guys. You can see the collection of books I have here behind me. I got all kinds of stuff to show you guys, and I love the old stuff. So hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell notification that'll tell you when our videos come out. Also, if you really like our stuff, it would mean a lot to us if you were to jump on our Patreon page. For as little as $1 a month, I mean, we ask $1 or $2 per video. You can cap it at $1 if you really want to, so you only ever pay us $1 per month, no matter how many videos we release. And it just helps us keep the lights on, and it helps us keep things going, helps us build and train, and just generally providing quality content for you guys, equipment costs, and etc., etc., etc. I mean, we don't do this to make money, but it ain't free either, right? So please check it out. There's a whole bunch of extra perks on there for you guys, and whether you give $1 or you give $2,000, you get all kinds of extra bonuses. You get our video content early, you get 10% off the warpainter.com, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff. So just go to the description below and check out our Patreon page. I mean, it's super easy, and it really helps us out here and make this channel amazing and make awesome content for you guys to see. So like I say, next week we'll be checking out the second part of this book. We'll be going through all of the scenarios and battle sequences and terrain features and all that kind of stuff, and all the cool stuff you can do there. Keep watching, guys. Thank you so much for watching so far, and I hope you enjoy our journey through 3rd edition. We'll see you at our next encounter.
Hey everybody, I'm Adam.
And I'm Jay.
We are Encounter Wargaming.
And we wanted to celebrate hitting our 1,500 subscribers with giving some stuff away. What are we giving away, Adam?
Fort Bane! Yeah. Alright, we're calling this the 2,500 subscriber Forge Bane giveaway, because that's the target we need to hit to give this puppy away.
That's right. So the first thing you need to do is share this video, the video you are watching right now. And
then click subscribe on YouTube.
If you haven't already.
That's it for one entry.
And the more you share it, hopefully, the more people we can get to hit subscribe and hit that 2,500.
Woo!
But there are other ways to win as well.
Tell them about it.
Well, you can follow us on Twitch. That will also get you an entry. So you subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitch. On top of that,
support us on Patreon for 5 big buckaroo entries.
Crazy. So also all the people that already support us on Patreon, don't worry, you're also 5 entries. But also, you can hit subscribe on Twitch. Subscribing on Twitch will get you another 5 entries into the contest.
So good, and all of this to say thank you guys for all the support. We appreciate it very much. We've come a long way, and it's because of you.
It's true. It's been a wild ride, and thanks for all the support, all the help, and we want to give you some cool stuff as a thank you.
Awesome. So hey, remember to share this video, and guys, I think that's it. So we'll see you at our next encounter.
Like a monkey in a rocket on his way back home. Okay.